I would have been dreaming about it for the wrong reasons. I think I would have been wanting to be an actor for maybe the fame. And honestly, and what that would do back then for like little Justin is it would...
Blake Lively is spiraling, and the descent is both rapid and relentless. The same fans who once clung to her every word, who celebrated her red carpet appearances, who shared her social media posts as if they were golden, have now turned on her with a fury that feels almost inevitable. To outsiders, this shift might seem shocking, but to those who have followed her career closely, the signs were always there. For years, she cultivated the perfect Hollywood image, the glowing wife, the doting mother, the effortlessly fashionable star who balanced success with humility. She was the embodiment of the American dream, the golden girl who appeared untouchable. But appearances can only last so long. Behind the carefully curated image was a pattern of behavior that fans can no longer ignore. What once looked like cheeky wit has been reinterpreted as arrogance. The confidence that once seemed admirable is now viewed as entitlement. Her determination, once spun as ambition, has been recast as controlling selfishness. And the result? A woman who was once beloved is now labeled as manipulative, deceitful, and even monstrous. The transformation of her reputation is staggering. It isn't just a dip in popularity or a temporary backlash that time will heal. This is a full-scale dismantling of her public identity. Her career, once built on the illusion of perfection, now lies in fragments. Fans are openly questioning everything they once believed about her. Her kindness, her authenticity, even her marriage, which was often held up as a rare example of Hollywood stability. The fairy tale that she so carefully packaged for the world has collapsed, and in its place is a narrative of arrogance, manipulation, and betrayal. In the court of public opinion, she has already lost, and the punishment is harsher than any critic's review. The loss of trust, respect, and admiration from the very people who made her famous. The downfall is especially brutal because it highlights just how quickly admiration can sour when the truth, or at least the perception of the truth, emerges. Hollywood loves to build idols, but it loves tearing them down even more. Blake Lively is not the first star to face backlash, but the speed and severity of her fall set her apart. Other celebrities have managed to weather scandals with a carefully worded apology, a quiet retreat from the spotlight, or even by reinventing themselves after a few years of silence. But Blake's spiral feels different. It feels permanent. This isn't just a stumble. It's an implosion. A collapse under the weight of lawsuits, public criticism, and failed attempts to spin the narrative in her favor. Every move she makes, every statement, every leaked piece of evidence, every PR maneuver only seems to dig her deeper into the hole she's created. And the contrast couldn't be starker. While she drowns in controversy, Justin Baldoni, the man caught in this legal and public war with her, is thriving. Colleagues describe him as genuine, humble, and kind, the very opposite of the image now attached to Blake. He is celebrated not only for his acting and directing, but also for his reputation as a caring, grounded human being. In every story, he emerges as the hero, while she appears as the villain. That contrast has only fueled the narrative of her downfall. It's no longer just about the lawsuit or the scandal. It's about character. Who she is versus who he is, and the world, it seems, has already chosen sides. What makes this collapse even more fascinating and more tragic is that it was preventable. If she had owned her mistakes, if she had shown humility, if she had recognized how quickly narratives can shift in Hollywood, she might have salvaged something. But instead, she doubled down. She leaned into control, entitlement, and manipulation. She hired questionable crisis PR experts, attempted to weaponize movements that should never be twisted for personal gain, and underestimated the intelligence of the public. Every attempt to cast herself as the victim only backfired, making her appear desperate, dishonest, and detached from reality. And now, the collapse of her Hollywood dream is not just a scandal, it is a public spectacle, a case study in how fast admiration can turn into resentment when the mask slips. The golden girl is gone. What remains is a fractured image, a career in ruins, and a reputation that may never recover. Next came the true PR catastrophe. The point at which Blake's downfall stopped being whispers on social media and became a full-scale implosion in front of the entire industry. In a desperate bid to control the narrative, Blake, ever the control freak, ever the perfectionist, brought in former CIA agent Nick Shapiro to manage the fallout. On paper, this was supposed to be a bold, brilliant move, the kind of high-level crisis management reserved for politicians or Fortune 500 CEOs. But in practice, it was a disaster. Instead of repairing her reputation, Shapiro's heavy-handed spin only highlighted her desperation. Every carefully crafted statement sounded hollow. Every calculated leak looked manufactured. Fans didn't see an empowered star fighting back. They saw a panicked celebrity grasping at straws to save a collapsing empire. Her strategy was clear: play the victim. She clung to the narrative that she was being harassed, mistreated, and unfairly targeted. She tried to paint Justin Baldoni as an abuser, casting herself as the brave woman standing against him. But the public wasn't buying it. In fact, the more she pushed the story, the more it unraveled. Fans who had once cheered her on grew skeptical, then critical, and finally merciless. By refusing to take accountability, Blake made it easy for people to spot the manipulation. Hollywood might try to shape narratives, but the internet is unforgiving. Once audiences saw through the spin, they cut ties without hesitation. And then came the February 22nd cover of The Hollywood Reporter, the single image that obliterated Blake's career. It wasn't an expose, not even an essay, but a piece of art. A simple, devastating drawing, Blake lively with a slingshot, firing at Justin Baldoni. It was blunt. It was satirical, and it was perfect. That one cartoon summed up everything: the petty tactics, the vindictive lawsuits, the desperate smear campaign. What was meant as PR ammunition became her undoing. The image went viral instantly, shared across social media as a kind of shorthand for everything wrong with her approach. People didn't need to read articles or sift through court documents anymore. That cover said it all. She was attacking, she was vindictive, and she was losing. Rather than tarnishing Baldoni, the stunt backfired spectacularly. The public saw her for exactly what she was, a villain in her own story. And when she tried to fight back, it only worsened the perception. She claimed sexism. She accused the media of unfair treatment. She pulled the gender card as her last resort, hoping to rally sympathy. But no one was convinced. Not the fans, not the press, not even her so-called Hollywood allies. Instead of rescuing her image, her response exposed her pathology. Every excuse, every outburst, every tearful denial only reinforced the growing belief that she wasn't a victim at all. She was the problem. From there, the dominoes fell quickly. Colleagues quietly distanced themselves. Brand deals evaporated. Media outlets that once championed her began running headlines dissecting her meltdown. Even her once unshakable partnership with Ryan Reynolds began to feel the effects as their carefully built couple's brand took a hit. The damage wasn't just to Blake Lively's career. It was to her entire household's standing in Hollywood. In trying to save her image, she destroyed it. People tore into Blake's hypocrisy non-stop, and the irony of it all couldn't have been clearer. This was the same woman who spent years branding herself as a strong, independent feminist, a champion of empowerment, a voice of resilience. Yet here she was, crumbling publicly over nothing more than a cartoon. The fan backlash wasn't just loud, it was absolutely brutal. The internet can be ruthless, and Blake felt it in real time. Her Instagram following didn't just dip, it nosedived. Since September, she has lost a staggering 864,000 followers, marking her steepest decline in over 5 years. For someone who carefully crafted her image as both a style icon and a role model, those numbers weren't just statistics, they were proof that the public no longer bought what she was selling. And if Blake thought she could weather the storm with Ryan Reynolds by her side, she was wrong. Just when it seemed like her reputation couldn't sink any lower, Ryan himself got pulled into the chaos. Despite being Hollywood's beloved golden boy, even he wasn't immune to the toxicity surrounding his wife. His following dropped by an even greater number, 398,000 followers gone. That figure spoke volumes. Blake's downfall wasn't just her own. It was so radioactive that it contaminated everything and everyone around her, including one of the industry's most universally liked actors. For Ryan, it wasn't just a PR nightmare. It was a stark reminder that her battles were dragging down his carefully maintained brand as well. Meanwhile, The contrast with Justin Baldoni couldn't have been more striking. While Blake and Ryan hemorrhaged public support, Baldoni's star rose higher. He gained 207,000 new followers and counting, as Hollywood and fans alike rallied around him. And it wasn't difficult to see why. He came across as authentic, grounded, and genuinely decent. Every story painted him in a favorable light. Every testimony from those who had worked with him reinforced his reputation as a kind and collaborative figure. In this saga, he wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. And fans weren't shy about voicing why. Why would you want to take over someone's movie? Take over someone's movie? One critic asked, pointing directly at Blake's reputation for hijacking productions. The outfits in this end are so out of touch. No, we don't want to watch bullies like Blake, another posted, capturing the growing consensus. The perception was clear. She wasn't just controversial, she was out of touch, egotistical, and toxic to any project she touched. What made the collapse even more telling was the silence from Hollywood's elite. This is an industry notorious for circling the wagons to protect its own, for covering up scandals, for burying damaging headlines. Yet even in such an environment, stars and studios alike began steering clear of Blake. When the same A-listers who once partied with her, collaborated with her, and praised her in interviews, suddenly refused to be associated with her name, it speaks louder than any headline. She had become a risk, an unpredictable storm no one wanted to get caught in. And then there was Taylor Swift, Blake's longtime friend, her supposed ride or die, the queen of defending her circle. Taylor has written diss tracks over casual slights, called out entire corporations for mistreating artists, and gone nuclear on anyone who crossed her. But here, nothing. No tweet, no Instagram post, no song lyric. Absolute radio silence. And in Hollywood, silence is deafening. If even Taylor Swift, known for standing by her friends, refuses to come to your defense, then it's not just bad. It's catastrophic. Meanwhile, the industry is already moving to erase Blake from the picture entirely. Studios are quietly racing to scrub her name from future projects. Producers are blacklisting her, refusing to work with someone who hijacks productions, throws tantrums on set, and transforms every film into her own personal power trip. In Hollywood, reputations can be fragile, but once you're branded as toxic, the road back is nearly impossible. And for Blake Lively, that seems to be exactly where she's landed, isolated, untouchable, and abandoned by the very world she once ruled. The industry has spoken loud and clear. Blake Lively is now a full-blown liability. What sealed it wasn't a scandalous expose or even leaked receipts. It was a single illustration. That Hollywood Reporter cover did what months of PR spin, legal maneuvering, and media narratives couldn't. With one striking cartoon, the entire victim's storyline Blake had built around herself collapsed. The image was devastating in its simplicity. Blake firing a slingshot at Justin Baldoni. No need for words, no long-winded essays, just one brutal mirror held up to the public, reflecting the truth everyone already suspected. And the truth was inescapable. If Justin had been too huggy or even made an offhand comment, it still didn't justify Blake's ruthless campaign. Fans recognized it immediately. She had been the aggressor all along. That cover was the spark that lit the match, and suddenly Blake began unraveling completely. She lashed out at the cartoon, calling it sexist, biased, and an attack on women. But no one bought it. Everyone could see it had nothing to do with sexism. It was about her outrage at finally being exposed. And that reaction only made things worse. You're basically saying you're a liar. You misrepresent who you are. That was the sentiment echoed across the internet, with fans roasting her hypocrisy in real time. How could a woman who had paraded herself for years as a feminist role model, a champion of women, turn around and use those same talking points as weapons in a petty feud? The contradiction was glaring, and the internet tore her apart without mercy. Overnight, major outlets that once shielded her flipped sides. The safety net of sympathetic coverage evaporated. For the first time in her career, Blake stood with no one left to protect her. Not the media, not her allies, not even her fans. And yet the spiral didn't stop. Instead of retreating, she doubled down, unleashing full-scale meltdowns over something as small as a cartoon. It was almost Shakespearean in its irony. A Hollywood A-lister destroyed not by a scandalous video or a damning deposition, but by a drawing that distilled her entire playbook. petty, vindictive, and desperate. That cover was the turning point, the confirmation people needed. It told them that the Blake Lively they had been watching all these years wasn't the heroine she pretended to be, but the villain of her own story. From there, the whispers turned into testimonies. Crew members and insiders began speaking out, revealing what it was really like working with Blake. Reports painted her not as a dedicated professional, but as a dictator on set, demanding last-minute script rewrites, overruling the actual director's choices, and commandeering the project as if she owned it. She wasn't the director. She wasn't the writer. She was cast as an actress and credited as an executive producer. But in her mind, those titles gave her ownership of the entire production. One insider compared it to hiring a plumber to fix your sink, only to have them barge in and start remodeling your entire house without permission. This wasn't collaboration. It was a hostile takeover. Blake herself reportedly confided to friends that she viewed the scandal as a fight bigger than her, framing it as some grand feminist battle. But insiders weren't buying that spin either. To them, it was nothing more than power disguised as principle. Directors, producers, even fellow actors grew tired of her antics. Hollywood is ruthless, but one thing the industry despises more than anything is a control freak who hijacks productions and bullies colleagues. And Blake fit that bill perfectly. The verdict from insiders was damning. Blake was never meant to wield that level of power. She forced her way into decision-making roles she hadn't earned, using her A-list clout and industry ties to strong-arm her vision into projects where she had no authority. To some, that wasn't just arrogance, it was fraud. Serial fraud, and no one wanted to work with her anymore. The reality is simple. Hollywood doesn't forgive dictators. It doesn't matter how talented you are, how famous your name is, or how powerful your connections once seemed. The moment you're seen as toxic, you're done. Blake Lively learned that lesson the hard way. She set out to bury Justin Baldoni, but instead she buried herself. And with her reputation now carved in stone as Hollywood's ultimate control freak, not even the best crisis PR team on Earth could rescue her from the wreckage. And the best thing, the most rewarding thing in the world, is to actually apologize to someone and mean it. But for Blake, that basic act of humility was nowhere to be found. Instead of accountability, there was only arrogance. The crew and co-stars were terrified of her wrath, with many allegedly keeping silent for years out of fear that Blake would blacklist them from the industry altogether. Because let's be real, if she didn't like you, your career was as good as over before it even began. The power she held wasn't just influence. It was intimidation, pure and simple. For years, she hid behind a carefully curated, polished America's sweetheart image, smiling for the cameras and charming interviewers. But behind the curtain, she allegedly ruled like a manipulative tyrant. And now, those who were once too afraid to speak up are finally breaking their silence and revealing the nightmare that had been swept under the rug for far too long. According to Blake Lively's own team, she is now working with Nick Shapiro, the CIA's former deputy chief of staff. Just let that sink in. This wasn't your average Hollywood fixer or PR crisis consultant. Blake went so far as to bring in someone with an intelligence background, someone trained in the shadows of power, secrecy, and spin. She probably assumed she could somehow twist this catastrophe into a dramatic comeback tale, painting herself as the misunderstood heroine of her own downfall. So what was her move? She hired an ex-intelligence operative for damage control. Yes, you heard that right. A real former spy named Nick Shapiro. Was this a straightforward reputation cleanup, or was there something far more clandestine at play here? Honestly, no ordinary celebrity brings in CIA-level tactics just to handle a PR meltdown. This decision alone revealed just how far she was willing to go to control the narrative, no matter how unnatural or desperate it appeared to everyone watching. As I mentioned earlier this week, the self-proclaimed Duchess of Gaslighting knows she needs help, and fast. Just this week alone, she even hired a new lawyer to join her already bloated legal team, one working at a different firm than her lead counsel. And guess what? It completely backfired. Instead of repairing her shattered image, even more damaging leaks began surfacing.